Hey there, and welcome back to the Awwshift Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Trucks. Today's guest is Eliza VanCort. Now, Eliza VanCort's the author of a book called Claiming Space, and it's really an interesting dive into what we need to do to be the most authentic selves that we have. And you've heard that word before. I totally get it. But it's more of like, how do you become the person that you really want to be inside, outside, right? It also is really tied to this thing, kind of cool concept called an anti-mentor. I'd never heard it till she talked about it. But I go, man, we all got these in our lives, these anti-mentors, and you'll hear more about who that is and what that is and where they show up, and also how to navigate the relationships with them. But a big piece of the discussion was communication. I think all of us have these lives that we're living that could be heavily improved if we got better at communication. She went through a very traumatic injury that made her forget a lot. Short-term memory was gone, and she had to learn how to communicate all over again. And in doing so, she kind of broke the code. That's turned into more about claiming space and actually creating a cool gift for the world. So today's episode with an amazing human with an amazing message. And I'm going to dive into the episode with you now. So without further ado, let's go meet Eliza. Hello, welcome into the show. You've already heard about how great this discussion was because that's how it works. As Eliza and I are sitting here, she's probably like, how? We didn't even do anything. But we did in the future. But welcome everybody to the show. We're going to dive into this conversation. I'm actually excited for it because she seems in our first intro to be a warm human. That's awesome. Just her joy and ability to communicate. That's honestly one of the best traits for me, talking to great humans, because they can share and float ideas into your head, which is the goal for today. So we're going to dive into this episode, and I don't know if she knows this. Well, first off, welcome to the show, Eliza VanCort. How are you?
I am really excited to be here. Yeah, it was fun talking beforehand, and I'm glad to talk now.
There we go. We got the technology figured out, folks. Sometimes it's all wonky. It's so weird. It's supposed to help us, and it does. But the moment it doesn't, it's like, I hate this thing. It's like, you can't get off. Anyways, we figured it out. But here's the question I start the episodes with. You could choose to answer it however you want. You can be unashamed and just, let the flag fly, right? Or you can be humble. It's completely up to you. But here's the question. I'm walking around town. I end up at a coffee shop. I sit down. There's a beautiful woman sitting next to me. It's you. I don't know you. You don't know me. For some reason, you feel compelled to turn and start talking to me. In your opinion, why should I listen to you?
Oh, wow. I do so many things like this, and no one's ever asked me that. That's a great question. Why should you listen to me? Well, I think that I've gone through a lot in my life, and I've gained some wisdom and some joy and some sadness from all of that. And I think that people who've gone through a lot and come out on the other side are usually pretty interesting to talk to.
I would agree, actually, 1,000%. It's those who have life lived that helps. I actually tell people you should not teach other people or tell other people how to run the race until you've crossed some finish lines, which is living some life. So let's talk about that. What races have you run that gave you a challenge? I think that helps set us up to figure out what's going to be a good area for people to grab some unique knowledge from you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had a really wonderful mom when I was younger. And when I was 4.5, she became paranoid schizophrenic. And I ended up being kidnapped by her 3 times. Wow. And she took me across the country by truck, from truck stop to truck stop, from New York to California, hitchhiking. And what happened on that trip was very traumatizing. I started to conflate invisibility with safety. It was really the beginning of my passion about claiming space. And then, I became a teacher. I lived a pretty great life. I still wasn't really claiming much space for myself. And then I had a head injury that compromised my ability to communicate. And I had to build my communication back up brick by brick. And I think those 2 experiences really changed me profoundly and allowed me to learn a lot of stuff.
Yeah, no, that'll do that, right? I think that there's always a statement I love, and it says, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. And when you have these rough life situations take place, and especially when you're younger, not that it's that you like it, but I personally have appreciation for my hard childhood, because it did open me up early on to get a brain kind of kicking and moving and paying attention. Now, before I dive into the stories a little bit, you mentioned this a couple times with Claiming Space. I know it's your book. I didn't obviously mention it till just now, but do you mind kind of sharing with us a little bit about the book and the concept, so as we dive in, it'll make sense for us?
Yeah, so I wrote a book called A Woman's Guide to Claiming Space. Stand tall, raise your voice, be heard. And to me, claiming space is living the life of your choosing unapologetically and bravely. And bravery to me is not an absence of fear, because what's brave about doing something that doesn't scare
Yeah,
you?
scared of, yeah.
Bravery is being really scared. It's fear meeting action. And I break the book into 5 different parts on how to do that, and just really a lot of direct instruction on how to claim space.
Yeah, I like that. So where did that first kick in? So I get the idea of claiming space that you first had that issue when your mom kind of kidnapped you to across the country. Where did that trigger in? And I trickle in. I want to help you, or have us help answer this question for people who may not have experienced something similar, which I'm sure very few have. But if we can connect the emotions of what you had to where they can go like, oh, okay, well, I didn't experience that, but I have experienced this feeling. Like, what would that be like?
Well, I think everyone has had that moment in their life where they just feel so small, and they feel like everyone around them is somehow able to speak their mind and say what they want to say. And somehow they don't feel like they have the right to do it. Or we've all had anti-mentors along the way, which I actually write about in my book, anti-mentors who tell us, you're not enough.
Yeah.
You're just not enough. And I think for me, claiming space isn't about becoming someone different. It's about becoming your most fully realized, authentic self. And that's a lifelong journey for all of us.
Yeah, I get that. That's the thing everybody gets it back in their days and go, I regret not doing this and trying this, whatever it is, right? That feels like it's just the expansion of them in real life, right? Because moments go by and you can't always get them back. I mean, the opportunity doesn't always kind of like resurface later on in life.
So interesting that you say that, because always say, it's just interesting you say that, because I always say, I don't believe in living in the moment. I know people think that's crazy because everybody's like, live in the moment. But I mean, moments come and go. And when you've lost your memory for an extended period of time, you understand that if you live in the moment, you can't learn, you can't grow. And you really realize when you don't have a memory, that your life is a collection of memories. And the question is, in every single moment, what kind of memories are you creating for yourself at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of your life? Because that's really what we live in. I mean, we don't live in the moment, and moments are infinitesimal, Yeah,
they are. That's very true. That opens a whole other thought for my brain too. You ever heard of the idea of event horizons and moments in life that are like so pivotal, they stand out from the rest of them?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a good, there's a movie on it that's creepy. You don't got to watch it. I know it's Halloween, but don't go watch that.
I don't watch scary movies. I'm very easily scared by them.
my best friend is a police officer. He's the same way. He's like, why am I going to watch that and subject myself to those emotions? I'm like, bro, you subject yourself to a weird world anyways. But no, there's a thought of like, I like the fact, there's these moments, these memories that kind of creep in. How was it kind of going through that yourself? Like, can you remember when you couldn't remember? Like, what was that whole journey like?
It was crazy. I mean, when I woke up from my accident, I was riding my bike, following all the rules, and somebody was texting and driving, and they hit me in the head with their car. I got a bilateral brain injury, subdural hematoma, and I woke up and I walked downstairs, and my ex-husband was there with my kids, and he had this huge spread on the table. And I remember thinking, he didn't cook this. This I know. So I said, well, how is this possible? And he said, oh, Tina brought it over. Tina's that like one friend who can like sense when someone needs a casserole, like from the distance. And I was like, you know what I mean? Like, she's there already before you're home from the hospital. But even for Tina, this was like quite a spread. And I said that, and he said, Eliza, you've been awake for a week. Your accident was a week ago.
Oh, wow.
And I was just blown over. And it was really hard, because you can't learn and you can't grow if you don't remember. I always said it's like a country that goes to war and nobody remembers who started it, so you can't fix it. That's what it felt like.
Wow. That's dark. Like in my head, I'm like that dark. So I was a football player. I played football. That's one of my biggest fears, like the brain stuff. I did a whole bunch of stuff with Dr. Amen for like the brain scans and everything. But that's a great fear of mine. A lot of these guys have these issues with their brain and their abilities. So I like to make sure I'm on it. But yeah, I can imagine, because that is a life. My life is my memories. And if I don't have those, and I don't have the same joy, I don't have the same perspectives, it's crazy to think of that. How did you get to where we are now then? Like, was there a journey that kind of went through, like tactically healing it? Did it just naturally take care of itself and heal? Like, how did that flow?
Well, the memory stuff came back on its own. Every day it was just a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. The communication, which was really compromised, was definitely not something that went back on its own. And when I realized I wasn't communicating well, I just want to tell a story and lie one time, but I'm a terrible liar, and say, and then I realized I wasn't communicating well and I just dove right in, which is just a lie. Just a lie. I got really depressed in my bed and was just like, I don't know if I can do this anymore, which I think we've all had that moment. Like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And then I realized staying in bed for the rest of my life was not a solid and stable life strategy. And so I started to really learn to rebuild my communication brick by brick. And it was a long and difficult process, but it was also incredibly enlightening. And I feel like at the end, I kind of cracked the code of communication. And it's been one of them. It's like having a superpower. It's kind of crazy.
So when you say communication, was it like verbal, being able to get words across, a thought cleared out of your head? Like what was the battle you actually had with communication?
Well, my friend, when I called her, I said, Kim, I feel like I'm doing so much better. I remember. And, everybody else is acting so weird. I don't get it because I'm great. And she said, Eliza, they're not acting weird. You're acting weird. No one knows what to do. No one knows what to do. Your vocabulary shot. You're speaking really slowly. Everybody's really uncomfortable. And then I called my friend who's a nurse, that person who just always tells it exactly like it is. And I was like, is this real? Is this real? And she said, dude, you sound like a stoned third grader.
That's amazing.
Like, wow. Oh, well, I don't never seen a stoned third grader, but I'm definitely aware that's a bad thing. So
yeah, I mean, I just thought of the idea of like a third grade. You never know nowadays. There's things that I'm in California and you can do anything out here. Shoot, Oregon has no laws in it. So okay, we got this situation. You're met with this moment, and those who may not have experience, like there is sometimes we realize, like, shoot, like I'm not perfect. Although we'll say it like, oh, I'm not perfect. Usually the moment something, pokes that imperfection, we put this wall up and go, nah, I'm good. But you're now met with the moment of like, I got to do work. Like I got to work on this. How did that feel and how did you pursue it?
Well, so my background's in political science, but I had been an actor, and then I left after being a poli-sci major, went to law school, took a year off from law school, never went back. Took an acting class, ended up going from acting to being an acting teacher to having my own studio for 20 years.
That's
and
cool.
And I taught something called the Sanford Meisner technique, a kind of modified version. I modified it. And it's all about picking up on the minutia of human behavior, looking at just people and really being able to see them in this visceral way. And then also understanding your own emotional life. So I called on all of that, but then I also combined it with my political science background, because what I noticed was, if you are white, if you're Black, if you are older, if you're younger, if you're from the South, if you're from a highly educated family, if you're from a family that is an immigrant family, all of these things impact how you're communicating. So what I found when I was researching all this is that everybody would say, oh, here's the way you're going to communicate better. And then they would tell you how a white man would communicate better. And what a white man can say and what everyone else can say can be very different. So the research is really great for that demographic. And so I started to realize, well, what some groups can say and what others can say are so different. And I became fascinated with it. And I basically just watched and listened and read and researched and applied everything that I had already known to sort of reconstruct my communication. In the process, I really learned about communication as a whole, which was, and claiming space. It was actually pretty damn fascinating.
Because that was kind of my thought. I was like, how do those two connect? Because we live in this world where we have individuals and we communicate with them, right? And I think I feel like I know that the make or break thing is our ability to communicate. And it's not just like, can I say this to you? It's, can I hear this from you? And I then formulate an idea, and can I process how I've heard it and say it back to you in a way that doesn't make you mad? So we start, and it's a dance. And the people that I have the best relationship with, we can say direct stuff, but they don't take it personal, right? But also they'll receive it. If I say it, you don't receive it. It's this wall. I'm like, I'm not going to keep talking to the wall, So that's kind of fits in a dance. How does that equate or marry over into the realm of this claiming space concept of being authentically you?
Well, when I first started, so I'm an extrovert. I love to talk. So
Good.
I couldn't talk a lot because I would get so tired. And my
Oh,
brain would just kind of get tired. So I had to watch and listen a lot, which for me was a really amazing experience.
mm,
And at first I thought, oh, it's communication. That's what's making some women or humans be able to walk into a room. I was really interested in women because I am a woman. But
makes sense.
how is it that some people walk in a room and they just command the space? And
Mm,
I tried to figure out, what was the one thing that made this possible? And as in life, at first I thought it was communication. Then I realized that's not true. There are 5 things that somebody has. And if you have these 5 things, these people actually just have this ability to sort of live their most fully realized life. And
mm.
that was a real shocker to me, actually.
You going to tell us the 5 things or make me ask?
Well, I never like to dive in because, if you're on the
Yeah.
news, they're like, you have exactly 3 seconds
Oh,
to
yeah, I
say
hate
your
those
whole
things.
story.
I had that yesterday too. It's like make them real tight and concise. Like, how do I do that? I'm used to speaking for an hour on a stage. I get you.
Exactly.
We got time
Me
here to
too.
do this, Eliza.
Okay.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd
So,
love another 5.
the 5 aspects of claiming space are: number 1, communication. So your physicality
Mhm.
and your voice. Do you really actually know how to move in a way that commands attention and makes
Yeah.
people actually take you seriously? The second one is community. People who were really good at building community were better at claiming space, and they were really good at not letting their community be poisoned by anti-mentors. They
Gotcha.
knew how to get those people out of their lives or at least neutralize them. The third is that we all have boulders that fall on us in life. Anyone who says they don't, like, I think they need massive therapy. But,
Mm,
but people say, oh, just get over that boulder. And, move on from that boulder. And I really firmly believe it's impossible to do that. But I
mm,
do think you can take those boulders, and I don't think you should actually. You can take those boulders and whittle them down until they're like a pebble in your pocket
mm,
that you carry with you. And so
mm,
when something happens, you can kind of touch it and go, oh, okay, I've been through this. I know what to do. Or, oh, I've been through worse. I can handle this. Or, oh, I miss
mm.
that person and that's okay. They're still a part of me. So those people learned how to take the sorrow and the hard times and turn them into something they could carry with them and give them a source of strength.
Mhm.
The fourth one is they knew how to combat people who would make them small. They were really good at shutting down aggressors, like microaggressions, things like that. And the final was people who were intersectional. Particularly, I noticed with white women who were not just hanging out and uplifting other white women tended
Mhm.
to do better. And women in general who hung out with women who didn't look like them did better, and people in general did. And my only explanation for this is that, one, when you hang out with people who aren't like you, you're going to make mistakes, and mistakes are the foundation of learning. And
Mhm.
secondly, you just learn more than if you're just hanging out with people who look like you. And I think
Yeah.
if you're specifically trying to make sure you're uplifting everyone around you and not just people who look like you, I don't know if I believe in a soul or not, but if there is a soul, it feeds you in some way. Maybe it feeds your soul. I'm not sure, but it just makes you a
Okay.
fuller, more enriched person.
I like that. It makes sense that's it's a good way to frame all these things. And you've said this a couple times. I didn't know if I need to poke into it, but I'm like, maybe I should. Anti-mentor. You seem to like that word, which I like that word. I have an assumption of what it could mean, but I think we all have these in our lives. And I'd love to know what your, we'll call it description or actual definition of this is.
Well, since I made it up, although I did Google it, and
There
I
you
guess
go.
other people have said it before, but
I've never heard
I
it
thought I
ever.
made it up. But
As far
yeah,
as
I
I'm
kind
concerned, you
of
made it up.
there's no what?
If anybody asks, I would quote you personally because I don't know anybody else.
Yes. Well, I think there's no definition for it. So the definition
Okay.
that I have is somebody who should be your greatest supporter, should really lift you up, but
Mm-hmm.
they end up making you feel small and diminished.
Mm.
And they do this often by intermittent reinforcement, which is why gamblers stay gambling from the house
Mm.
always wins in casinos, because they use intermittent reinforcement. It's powerful. So basically, it doesn't matter what you do with these anti-mentors. You can be wonderful, you can be terrible, but the response you're going to get is criticism, 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 and once in a while, a lot of praise. And it doesn't matter how wonderful you are or how not. So you just keep looking for that moment of praise, but your behavior has nothing to do with it. And they found that people, if you give people intermittent, they actually did a study on mice, and mice would sit there pulling that lever over and over and over until they starved to death.
Sugar, right?
Is that what it was? I don't know. They just gave them pellets of food. They gave one every time you hit it, you get a pellet.
Yeah.
So you do something, you get a little reward. The other ones, you don't get anything, but once in a while, randomly, you get something awesome. Those mice will either eat themselves to death or starve themselves to death sitting at that lever.
Yep. I've heard from monkeys too. They'll have them like hit a button to get a piece of fruit. And if they do it for a while and eventually get one, after a long while, they'll do it until they die. Like this, they will never stop. Because eventually they're going to they've been taught. I get that.
Yeah.
Dang, that's interesting. And what's funny is, and in my life, as soon as you're saying that, I think all of us go like, oh, I know that person. I've got that in your life. And I didn't tell you, you said your mom, all of a sudden she became schizophrenic. My mom, my biological mom, it's called like a pathological liar. There's a whole lot of weird things, a lot of mental issues. In fact, my siblings, besides me, who have the same dad, their dad was in a mental hospital. I think he passed away in one. And my mom has some things, but we have a different dad. But all three of them have some interesting traits they're separate from me. My wife goes like, "You're not going to all of a sudden." I said, "I'm fine. I'm gonna be okay, love." I think, but no, there is that dynamic where it can just flip, and then you just, what do you do? And then that person that in your life telling you all these different things, and you just don't know what to believe in it. So how does somebody break free of the anti-mentors? It feels like a good question to ask.
That's a great question. And I would say the first thing is really that you need to identify them. So you got to go there. I have a whole checklist in my book of all the different things that make somebody an anti-mentor. And it's really hard. So sometimes it can be helpful just to go through the checklist. And then the other thing is, once you're sure they are an anti-mentor, there are two things you can do. One is you can neutralize them, and there's a way in which to do that. And the other is that you can get them out of your life. But the first step to all of that is a grieving process, because the very most foundational thing you can do to get rid of an anti-mentor is to realize they will never give you what you want when you want it. And if you stop putting yourself out there, if you're not like, Charlie Brown, who's like, "I'm going to get the football this time." And Lucy's like, "Sure, go for it." And then like, boom, on the back he goes. If you start realizing, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to run for the football anymore. I'm done with this person. I know they're going to pull it. And even if once in a while they don't, it's not worth the pain. That is the first step. Of 4 steps of getting rid of an anti-mentor.
Yeah, I like that one. It's not easy to do, though, because there's like tribal mentality for us humans. We don't like to be separate from the tribe or removed from it in some way. And I know that experience. I've watched, myself have people in my life and like they didn't belong. I didn't need, but gosh, you want that thing from them. Like I grew up wanting my mom to love me. I just wanted her to want me to come home, and she never did, never got me back. Right. And it took me a lot of years. I mean, into my early 30s to finally kind of move past and release all the tension of that. Or maybe make it a pebble, we'll call it. And so it is a unique nuance. It's a strength of mine, which is a good and bad strength. On the good side is like, I'm able to actually navigate conversations and hardship and weirdness with people, because I understand like this is just something people do. Not everybody's going to be a fit for me. We could have a great conversation now, but about 10 minutes in, I'll know like, I'm never going to talk to you again. We'll go for another 50 minutes though. I'll talk to you for an hour, but I know at the end of this hour, like it's the last we'll talk. But then also, there are people who like, I'll let them in. And I think what I've noticed, maybe you can talk to this, is sometimes I'll be leery of having, and I was leery of having those kind of people enter. So I put a wall up so nobody could enter, because I didn't want to have another anti-mentor in my life, we'll call it. So I go, I'm not letting anybody in. And it took me years to move past that and go, I'll let you in, but I'm going to remove you quick. You ever have that kind of experience?
Well, I think for me, it was sort of the opposite, which was because I was kidnapped. My thing was, get every adult around me and hold them close and make them like me to a pathological extent that I can't. I'm a pathological people pleaser, which, my bestie Kim, who I quote in my book, says people pleasers will kill you and cry over your dead body. I believe that. I'm like, I'm so sorry that you're dead. It makes me feel so sad that I killed you. So I think it's really like for me, getting over my people pleasing and realizing it's okay if people don't like me. It's really fine. I got to be my authentic self. But I definitely have friends who have had trauma who have the same thing that you're talking about. They're like, you know what? No one's getting in. This is a fortress, and the fortress is always up. The gate's always up.
It does. It sucks. And I think I've missed out on some great things in my life because of that. But then also I let people in, and I'm very keen on like, hey, I'm gonna. It's like it's your innocence of proven guilty, but as soon as you're guilty, it's a life sentence with me. Like, don't do dumb stuff. You know who I am. You butcher it. Like, we're never gonna be cool again. And I got a lot of people that I love them from a distance. I'll say hi, I'll shake your hand, but like, I'm not answering your phone call. Like, it's kind of this interesting dynamic.
Isn't that interesting that like trauma can take you to two different extremes, but it's really all coming from the same place. It's like a fear of being hurt, being alone, being let down, it's just different responses to the same kind of pain.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know if it's a right or a wrong. I'm not even going to say that your right way's wrong or right. It's just what I do. It works for me in my life. I also think that the kind of life I live is a big factor. Like there's a certain way that I have to have energy, and I have to really protect that energy. I got to protect the peace I have to be a present husband and a father, and for myself and my own mental health. Then also when I go up and show up and speak, and like certain clients I work with, if I don't have myself grounded as much as possible, which can never be every day, then I'm not the best for my life. And so when I let certain people in and they rob me of that, it's robbing from somewhere else. Like it's taking it from my marriage, it's taking it from my kids. And that's the kind of stuff I go, all right, look, you can come in and hang out if you add to the whole party. But if you come in and start kicking over punch bowls, like you got to go. Like we're not having that take place. And that's just the nature of how I function.
I think that's something everybody should do. Nobody needs to take care of people who are making them feel bad.
Yeah. That doesn't help. And the thing is sometimes they're closest to us and we can't completely get away. They're cousins, uncles, friends, other people around. But you can definitely still create some separation and create really good boundaries. But again, it's a conversation for another time. But I do want to dive back into the book because I like this idea of claiming space. I've used a lot of conversation about being authentically you, being who you are. But the language of claiming space is interesting because I hear it as like I'm taking something back that's mine, like to claim it, or whether I'm taking something I want. How does that like expand out to, let's say, do you ever think about it beyond women and talk to, kids and maybe men? Or is it just a space where like you really want to focus there? Because I'm sitting here going like, that's something that some men should do too. Like there should be a space you claim like your sense of self and become who you want to become.
Yeah. Oh, no. I mean, the amount of men who have written me letters saying, my wife made me read your book. And I really related to a lot of it. Often they say, I don't want to centralize myself, and I'm like, it's not centralizing yourself. I always joke that I think a lot of this book could be a targeted person's guide to claiming space with an emphasis on women, but that would have been a crappy title.
That's a weird title.
It's like just a bad title. But I mean, I don't get a lot of straight white men from money who contact me and say they have a hard time, like big money, claiming space, because I think they're really taught that the world is their oyster, and so they don't.
Whatever they want, go get it.
It's just you get to do stuff because you're you, and so there's not really a struggle there unless they've had some sort of trauma. But that's not a huge group of people. I mean, the rich and the poor gap in this country is so huge. There aren't a lot of there are very few number of very rich people. But those folks don't seem to need my help that much. But everyone else, I think, does.
It's the people who like they walk and you're going to move out of their way, kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
I dated a very tall white man, and we were walking through Times Square. He was like 6'3", and and he would walk, and everyone parted. I couldn't believe it, like the Red Sea. I was watching. I was like, wait, what is happening? And I said, finally, I was like, you do realize people were jumping out of your way, right? And he was like, well, yeah. I mean, everybody is always like, who goes first? So I just decide I'm going to keep going. And I was like, only you would think that.
It's interesting because it's weird. It's a trait that I want to, like, I have that trait, but I'm also empathetic of the people around me. So I don't have that. It's like, there's a certain level I go to of going like, yeah, someone's got to go, but there's also a little part of it. It's like, it's going to be me, and it's like, I ain't got to be you, bro. Like, chill out, go take a nap. So there's also certain situations where like that people do craziness. So I can see why that may not be the big demographic. Right. But I do know that, like, so for example, I coach a youth football team. It might not be in your pocket of things you know much about. It's completely okay.
Oh, I have a Steelers family in Pittsburgh. Trust me.
I used to play for the Steelers, so it'd be a small world there.
I will
And
definitely be
there's a
sending them to
dynamic.
this. They'll lose their minds.
There you go. Like, hey, this guy used to play for Steelers a long time ago when I was a younger buck. My back didn't hurt all the time. It was the last team I played for, actually. So you have this situation I look at and I go, well, a lot of these kids, like they're going to grow up, and they're going to do the things that they want to do. And I feel like there's some kids that I can't get to come out of their shells. And it's not that they have to, but I realize that to really express and experience the life that they can have at the fullest level, you have to claim your space. You have to say, I'm here. I'm going to do what I'm going to do this. I'm going to be this person, and go do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I can't get these kids to move sometimes. I mean, I can't get them to just, and it's not even always a matter of like, go physically hit somebody. It's like, can I get you to run full speed, please? Or I want you to yell at the top of your lungs. I want you just to, go to the gut of you. And they go, and I go, that's not it. Like, give me, how does somebody truly in those emotional moments, like expand out beyond that comfort level they have?
I mean, I think for kids, it's like the art of teaching, and I'm sure you're really good at it if you're working with them. I mean, I'm sure you get them there eventually. It's just like you got to take all the little angles. I think with adults, so much of we just get these messages when we're younger, you're too, all these messages, you're too quiet, you're too loud, the amount of twos we get when I was too much of a space cadet, and now I get paid to sit around and think about stuff,
Yeah.
So I always say to people, one of the things I think is actually really helpful is if you start to kind of unpack the messages that you're told, it becomes really clear that often the thing that people are going after you about is your strength, which is why you make yourself small, because you don't want to expand into the thing that people have targeted as a weakness, but is actually a strength. And I find that if you want to know what you're good at, think about what people told you to stop doing, or think about what people told you weren't good at. Not you thought, they told you, because usually that's your superpower.
Wow. That's a complete reframe that my mind just took a little, like I have like a little pause. I love this. In a good way, like it's a good thought to have, because I'm a father. I got kids, and there's things that I'm like, you gotta stop doing that, And then as you said that, I'm like, oh wait, my daughter, 14 years old, she's a teenager, and she's you said space cadet. I go, my daughter's floaty. She just kind of, she'll wander by vans with open doors on the sidewalk. Like, what are you doing? Like, you don't know. What do you mean? It's just kind of, and so I get that. And you got to be more, But it is interesting. Like if I was to take that into account and pull back and go, because there are definitive awesome things she does with that same trait.
Yeah.
Like the way she can get creative and make things and draw. And I'm like, that's an amazing, I can't do any of what you just do.
Yeah.
I just did. But the thing is if I shut that down, then maybe that affects that. That's interesting to process.
Yeah. I mean, that's been huge for me as a parent. I have four kids. I have my nephew, my two sons, and my daughter. And my oldest son was really dyslexic. And he had several things. Well, first of all, he would hyper focus like crazy. You could not get him off a task. He started Legos, trying to get him to stop Legos. He had total time blindness. Secondly, he would not stop moving. He almost broke my rib when he was actually inside my body. The OB was like, I've seen this before. I had to sleep with my finger under my rib. He ended up, and he never stopped. He never stopped moving. And I remember sitting on the floor crying. I was so exhausted. I just could not keep up with him. He ended up being the 3-time national collegiate cycling champion for the United States. And it was, he had to hyper focus and not notice time passing. He was able to stay in that pocket for so long, and he could run off all that energy that, was an inordinate amount of energy. My daughter was oppositional as hell. And now she is an activist for climate change. So, I really believe your kid, the thing that drives you crazy about your kid is probably the thing that is where the magic sauce is.
Yeah. I could talk about my kids going crazy all the time. My oldest is he spoiled my wife and I. He's a great kid, great human being. Dude's got his head on his shoulders. It's one of those things where I go I don't know where he got it from. I know where he got it from. He got it from me, but they just listen to us. The other ones are like, I'm not gonna listen to you. I'm just gonna do it on my own. I'm like, but you don't know what you're doing on your own. Can you just listen to it? And so I explain it. My twins, my daughter, we talked about my son. He has this thing where if I extrapolate him out 10 years from now, unabated, unchanged, he's either going to be in jail or a billionaire. I don't know. The dude is just, and I go, stop. What do you, but But at the same time, I go, these are amazing traits if he takes them into adulthood and could use them for the right things. And I'm trying to get him to get into some boxes. And I think that he does need a structure. I think every human needs some form of a structure, even if it's a loosely bound one. But he only does what he wants to do. He just floats. He's fairly entitled to all of them. Is the one that kind of like has this lack of true appreciation for what his life is like compared to what it could be. But yeah, the thing I'm looking at going like, yeah, the things that he gets in trouble for, the talking all the time, the whatever, but it's like the things he says, I'm like, well, he's outgoing, he's extroverted in a way that's positive. He is, I don't want to say charismatic, but he can be manipulative in some ways. There's definitely some human communication traits that are somewhat useful, maybe not used in the proper way just yet. He draws people in. He doesn't realize he's a leader. Like, he's a kid that he doesn't get, like, the teachers always say, like, dude, everybody listens to you. Can you get them to like do good things that are like the craziness you do? And he doesn't get, so I go, all right, I see these things you're talking to. And yes, extrapolate it out while they give me frustration now. If he learns to utilize them properly, they're going to be amazing traits for his life as he gets older.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's our job, right? Is to like see those things and say, how can I funnel this? Like, is he going to go into debate club? Like what kind of stuff can he do that kind of capitalizes on that stuff? And I think that's, for me, that was the trick with being a parent, and is the trick, because my youngest is 20 and he's still sort of finding his way, is what is it? What is that thing? And for him, he's starting to, Lucian, it's like music is starting to look like that thing. And my nephew, he used to, everybody was so worried because he would just watch TV all the time. Couldn't stop talking about superheroes, just watch TV and listen to music all the time. What is he doing now? He's an editor. He's an editor for a film editor. So, he loved that, and that's what he did. And I remember, when we were helping him decide about college, he was getting pressured to do all this stuff. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And he's like, I want to go to school for film. And I was like, do it. That makes sense. So, but it's a hard thing, especially because the world is tough. And, you just want to shelter your kids. And I don't know, part of me wants to be like, be an accountant. But it doesn't ever work out if someone doesn't want to be an accountant.
I guess that's the co-opposite too. Is like, it's another one of those, like, I don't want to shelter them. I want them to have life kick their butt, but have support in we'll call it some kind of process to utilize in the moments of it. Because then he gets strong, and then I can get better sleep, because I know that somewhat got it. But like my oldest, like, I'm good. He doesn't drink. I know he doesn't, because he's waiting for us to pay him $15,000 when he turns 21. Grandma, mom, and I are like, we'll give you $5 if you make it. Each of us $5 if you make it to 20. And he doesn't need to. He doesn't. I think even if it wasn't there, he probably wouldn't, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think it's because I did not coddle him. My wife, on the other hand, she would love for them to be like that. Like, don't make it so hard. And I go, no, I need this. I need this for my young men, because my young men have to be grown men someday. And if I don't give them some of these traits, they're not going to be men that you respect as their mom. Yeah. And so it's a navigation of things. But even then, it's also my judgment. I could be dead wrong. They could go to school and find an amazing mentor that teaches them something new that dad could never teach them, right? It's just this weird thing we grab onto, and we never know. But I love how it ties back to what you're talking about. Like, it's them finding out what they want, claiming their own space, living into it. It's pretty beautiful to look at it that way. Where did this become like the thing that you want to carry a torch for? Because this isn't something that you could have been doing anything, right? Why was this the thing for you?
Well, I think that we all are really kind of healing our own journeys, right? So for me, I definitely felt like I had to be small. I mean, I was kidnapped so many times. I used to hide behind this curtain of hair, and I would just quietly color. And I just didn't want anyone to see me even. And when I realized how much my life was enriched by going and putting myself out there, even when it's scary. And then I started teaching people, of course, and I saw that the people who could take those risks did so much better in life and in every aspect of their lives. And then between that and my head injury, I just really realized, there's this gap out there. We teach people math, we teach people science, we talk about communication in these sort of, these out there terms, but we, more like a ethereal idea of what communication is. But nobody says like, hey, when somebody's going after you and saying really mean things, you don't have to nod your head in agreement we all affirmation nod. Keep your heads really still, and that will help you shut them down. Nobody's talking about these little pieces of advice that make these global changes in the way that you communicate. And I felt like there was a real gap that needed to be filled.
Yeah, I love that because it is true. And literally that's like the little nuances that make a vastly big difference. For example, like my son, the oldest son, like as he goes in the world, is like, you need to, whenever you walk around, like keep your head up. And if people catch you in your eyes, like you look in their eyes and you can give a nod. Doesn't be disrespectful, but let them know that you hold your space. Like let them know that you see, because when it's just a person of like, especially men in this world, when I'm walking, the guy looks at me, does this, like he avoids my eyes. Like I immediately feel like, all right, well, it's not the guy that's going to have like a good stature. Like I know he's not the leader of the group. Just those little nuances.
That's fascinating.
It's an odd thing, but it's a simple. And it's funny is I told him this well before I even understood the whole concept of like Emmett Till back in the day. Like his whole thing was he looked at somebody in the eyes, and I was like, I didn't even know that was what was the catalyst to it all. But I just, as a man, I felt like I want you to know I'm here, and I want you to know that I know who I am, and I have a sense of space for myself. And that little thing, it's seen differently, but you are surely these little things have big, global, expansive, touch points in our life without us even paying attention to them.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you were talking about your sons, I was thinking about my friends who are raising Black children, and particularly Black young boys to men, and just how they have such a steeper hill to climb to make sure that they're going to be okay. I mean, I don't worry about my daughter. I worry about my nephew, though, who's, Black man in his 20s. I worry about him every day. And, I hear the stories every day, and what he has to do to raise his children, and his son particularly, is, he doesn't have room for error because of the world we live in.
It's different. It's difficult. And there's no definitive answer to it. You just got to do the best you can, pay attention to things. And then, hopefully some things in time change for the better. Obviously be part of it if you can, but yeah, it could be a whole other podcast on that. But it's been a blast. I just looked at it as like, man, time flies. You have fun talking to great people. A couple things. We'll have two. There's like two questions. We'll call it two final questions. The first question is, where can I send people to get the book, to get more access to you, all the fun stuff to enter your world?
Yeah. Well, I always feel like a telemarketer, but you get my book anywhere books are sold.
There you go.
Which is true. You can also, I make my living speaking, doing workshops. Occasionally I coach, not so much anymore. And you can reach me through my website. I also have a really cool community I'm developing on my website, where I send out newsletters and content that you're not going to get anywhere else. So yeah, those are ways in which you can reach me. I also have a pretty big following, particularly on TikTok. I have 250,000 followers on TikTok, which,
nice.
So yeah, you can definitely check me out that way. Those are the main ways to reach me.
I like it. Sometimes it's all you need. I tell people when I go on podcasts, I go, look, I'm an Instagram guy. Go to Instagram. If you like what I'm doing, pay attention, hang out. If not, I'm not going to tell you to go to 70 other places. Just go one. And then the rest of it, you'll find it there.
And I didn't say my website. See, this is when I get in trouble. So it's ElizaVanCort.com. No U in court. Okay. I always forget to say that. I'm not good at the marketing end of things. It's not my strength.
Hey, we're good. Hey, teamwork makes the dream work. We got to figure it out together. Final question. I heard earlier you say you don't believe in the soul, so I'm going to reframe this question. What promise did the Creator make to the world when you were created?
I don't know if I believe in a soul. I still haven't decided on that one yet, but I hope I have one. I think the promise, at least I hope the promise, is that if we're all kind to each other, really kind, and listen to each other, that maybe things are going to be okay.
It's a good one. And I agree with it too. That's big. Kindness is an interesting thing that doesn't always come in bushels for the world, right?
No, we need more of it right now, particularly.
We really do. We really do. And I don't know why we don't get it. It's, I think when people, if you, I don't know, different conversation, different time, but I agree that there's a need for it heavily. And when you have it, it's beautiful. And you can get it in small spurts, and the entire world isn't all broken, just, pockets of it. And you got to find your way to kind of expand that hope out there that people get it. So
yep. It comes right back to you if you put it out there.
It is. The world's a mirror to you. Always
Yeah.
is. Well, I appreciate you coming and hanging. Literally do. It's been a blast chatting. Hey, I like your mind, your heart. It's cool. I hope you keep doing what you're doing for many, many, many more years and serve more people with your book. Those of you guys who are out in the world, go grab the book. Go check out her work. Honestly, at the end of the day, it just takes one simple idea to change your life if you apply it. Also, if you know somebody who needs to hear the episode because something that Eliza shared was amazing for you and you need them to get it, but they won't listen to you, share the podcast. It's super simple. And outside of that, as always, make the most of your Awwshift moments so you can make shift happen. It's Anthony Trucks and Eliza VanCort signing off.
Hey, thank you for tuning into the Awwshift Podcast. I pray that we gave something amazing to your life. And if you found this episode served you in some way, I would love if you could share it with people you know, people you love, as well as your community, because you never know who needs that simple little seed that can grow into something amazing for their life. And the actual training doesn't stop here. If you want your free copy of the show notes sent to you after every episode so you can get the major points consolidated down, simply go to textanthony.com and message the word notes. Till next time, make shift happen.